Follow the buzzer. Rest in peace. Woo! The best there is, the best there was, and the best ever will be. What you gonna do, brother? Hey, yo.
Can you see me now?
Strategy my Oklahoma ass.
Life sucks, and then you die.
Welcome to another episode of the JM Report. I'm your host, GoodOlJM, and this is episode 56, coming to you from CSP Studios in Tampa, Florida, the birthplace of pro wrestling. And I gotta say, I'm getting off a little bit of a high here. I'm sure many of you have done it by now or about to have it fulfilled sometime this weekend. But last night I was able to, and fortunate enough, to catch the early premiere of Avengers Endgame, and wow, no spoilers, no worries, but I gotta say, the 11 years it took to get to this point, it was worth the wait. It was just building and building these writers, producers, and directors, most of them anyway. They knew how to hype up the crowd, the audience. They knew that it would be worth all the trouble and all the hard work and years. Not only on their part, but the actors and the studios as well. And yeah, there's gonna be those really diehard fans that are gonna nitpick the hell out of it. Hey, I'm sure I will too eventually. But for what it is, for what it's worth, yeah, it's definitely worth a watch. I'm somewhat of a minor movie critic, though I haven't done much of it yet. But unless you follow me at facebook.com/GoodOlJM, you'll know a little bit more. And eventually I'll start putting some reviews here on YouTube like I used to do when I first started this about, not too long ago. I'll say a little more than a year ago. And it's just me adding another audio clip or video on here. But, like I said, things are being worked out right now, so it's just going to take some time. But this week, I'm on the side of pro wrestling. Well, there are quite a few interesting stories, quite a few follow-ups and updates. Unfortunately, as far as the updates on individual wrestlers, not all of it good, but eventually they'll rebound and make a comeback real soon on the injury side of things. But also, and I'll get into this a little bit in a little while. If you're a shareholder or do the whole stock exchange thing, and you're part or have some shareholdings in WWE. Not good news this week. I usually don't follow that, but once I see numbers aren't that good, they will rebound eventually, but in between that time, it takes a while, and some people take a hit. At least that's my understanding, but let's not waste too much more time and get into the floor of things with Monday Night Raw this week. As Triple H opens up the show, and just as he was about to say something on the microphone, Seth Rollins walks out, and these two meet in the ring and surprisingly shake hands and hug it out. Kayfabe, of course. But it's funny how at one point Triple H points out that Rollins used to be the King Slayer, and now he's the Beast Slayer. Can't wait till he becomes the Viking Slayer. But anyway, well, apparently he wasn't aware, Rollins was, that is, because we, the audience, was shown a graphic before all of this started of two triple threat matches where the winners of each triple threat match will face each other later on in the main event of Raw, and the winner of that match will have a Universal title match at Money in the Bank versus Seth Rollins. All members of both triple threat matches, added up as 6. I know math. Each one at a time will come out and say their piece about being the next challenger and becoming eventually the new Universal Champion. As in no particular order, but Samoa Joe, Rey Mysterio, Drew McIntyre, The Miz, Baron Corbin, and AJ Styles all made their way to the ring. To be honest, it was not almost, but I guess the most predictable way to go. What they could have done here as far as the outcome at the end of the night of who would face Rollins for the Universal title at Money in the Bank. But not to give it away here just yet, but it turned out that way. And a lot of us were not surprised. So they get into the first of 2 triple threat matches after this promo, as Rey Mysterio versus Samoa Joe versus AJ Styles. This could have main evented anywhere around the world at a SummerSlam, Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, and I dare say WrestleMania, because this was one of the best triple threat matches I've seen in recent time. And all 3 men did not disappoint. In the end, we see Styles victorious after catching Rey Mysterio jumping off the top rope, delivering a powerbomb onto Samoa Joe, who was already laid out, and then picking Rey back up to deliver a Styles Clash once again onto Samoa Joe to get the pin and win. So now Styles is in the main event to determine the number 1 contender later on. Naomi went one-on-one with Billie Kay, one half of the women's tag team champions. Yeah, this match didn't take too long. In the end, we see Peyton Royce trying to interfere, jumping on the apron, as Naomi grabbed Billie Kay in the headlock, and it looked like she was about to do the bushwhacker battering ram, but instead it wasn't a headbutt. It was her 2 knees into Peyton Royce's gut, knocking off the apron, spinning around to bulldog headlock down Billie Kay, and when she got back up or tried to halfway, Naomi delivered a sunset flip and got the win. Now, I've made it clear more than once that I'm a huge Iconics fan. And the fact that they became women's tag team champions at WrestleMania was probably the best creative choice, considering what happened to the other 3 teams after the draft. And I'll get into some of the stories of individually as well later on. And they're heels. And sure, when Sasha and Bayley were the tag team champions, they really didn't do much. They themselves would have one-on-one matches almost as much as they had tag team matches. But even during the tag team matches, the titles were never on the line. It was almost as if they won them and only defended them from one pay-per-view into another. And where are they now? Yeah, Bayley's on Smackdown, Sasha's in, I don't know, the Bermuda Triangle for all we know. And the Iconics, logical choice. Yeah, I know logic doesn't really exist here in WWE, but it was almost as if like Doctor Strange came around and said there was no other way. And now they're the champions, and ever since they won them, they themselves, the Iconics, have been only in one-on-one matches and lost every single one of them. And they're heels, they're champions, they're pretty much pulling the cowardly any way to keep their titles around their waists, heelish tactics, if you will. And a lot of fans resent them for it. Not the fact that they're pulling off heelish things like they should because they're heels, but the fact that they're champions and pulling off all this nonsense. I mean, how and why are they to blame? You know, they take marching orders just as much as anyone who has a job, working 9 to 5, you know, so to speak, and they're told what to do. I understand you don't have a creative team as much as a supervisor, but they're doing what they got to do. They're doing their job, in short. I wish the ones that pull the strings or tell them how and what exactly to do, then you want to maybe push them in the right direction and come up with something better than just be on this losing streak. I mean, by the time everything's all said and done, they would have gone through every single person in the women's roster on both brands, and by the time it comes to defend the titles, they'll drop them to whatever team that it's going to be. And have that new team, those new champions, brand swap or brand jump. And it's almost, I won't go as far as say perfect, but close. Where you can have champions brand jump and have dueling rivals, if you will, or feuds, obviously multiple angles to go across both shows on Raw and SmackDown and keep things just a bit interesting. And of course, yeah, the women's roster is much smaller than the men's. I get that. But just imagine if there weren't two separate men's tag team champions or an Intercontinental and United States champion. By that logic, I'll say have all champions jump. I mean, I'm sure there'll be an issue with the WWE and Universal, but if they're not planning to unify those things anytime soon, then I guess there'll be those exclusive champions to each brand. But I think they would have benefit where you can give other superstars who are not being watched on TV much because they're not on TV at all. Or, like I said last week, you won't know if they're ever around or even performing at all because they do their main event shtick about an hour before Raw goes on the air. And that episode never appears until a month later on the network. So by having men's tag team champions jump around, you can have said not seen before or not seen too many times TV, say EC3 teaming up with Razor, before Akam comes back, and they have a shot at the title. Oh, they failed. Oh well, thanks for coming, and then move it along. Have team up. I don't know. Have Ricochet. Team up with someone that we haven't seen on TV for a while, and like an Apollo Crews. Have those team up. Oh, okay. Didn't win the titles. All right, we'll try again next time. That's just me, and I probably didn't lay it out as best way possible. But at the end of the day, it just gives opportunities to others that we have not seen on television, if ever or at all. Like every machinery, but they've been devoted, if you will, to main event and have a shot at the titles. And I have a chance to brand jump if you win them. Moving along. We once again see the dollhouse and the bunny riding the rocking horse, chair, whatever you call it. And it's choking out another stuffed animal. Mm-hmm. And of course the creepy little porcelain doll in a black wedding dress. Is it Abigail? Is it Annabelle? Is it Bray Wyatt in drag? WTF, only time will tell. And the laugh didn't sound like Bray this time. It was more of a high-pitched feminine laughter. So I guess they were trying to, shuffle the cards a little bit where they realized, well, people are noticing these things. We don't want them to notice just yet. Well, don't make it so obvious. I mean, it's one thing, and they've shown this, and I'll get to this coming up in a little while. When the term plans change or they change things on the fly or from one week to another, and it's obvious, it's because they know they screwed up. There's no other explanation, and I don't want to hear anything about, we brainstorm things and we come to the conclusion that it probably wasn't the best route to take. Like, no kidding. No kidding. Not that anybody was complaining about this segment or this vignette about the return of Bray Wyatt, but in other fields, when you screwed up, you screwed up. And I want to believe that there's at least one person behind the scenes, whether as an agent or a part of the creative team, whomever, one person that has let their voice heard and say something along the lines that this may not work because of these reasons. I hate to think there's more than one, and later on kind of gloat and dust the dirt off their shoulders and be like, I told you so. Give that person a raise. It was time for the second triple threat match. The Miz versus Baron Corbin versus Drew McIntyre. and the winner takes on AJ Styles later on in the night. And it was Baron Corbin who literally steals the win from Drew McIntyre, delivering a Claymore kick to The Miz as he was going for the pin. Here comes Corbin, and he throws McIntyre out, and he pins The Miz and gets the win. And it will be Baron Corbin going one-on-one with AJ Styles later on in the night. Of course, McIntyre is pissed, but at least he wasn't the one they ate the pin, as they're seemingly still protecting Drew McIntyre. Hasn't officially lost, at least by not having his shoulders counted down or tapping out. But maybe there's still big plans for McIntyre in the future. I would dare say, as far as SummerSlam goes. And we'll see who's a champion then, Universal that is. And just real quick, but by the time, no, not even, once it was revealed that it would be Baron Corbin versus AJ Styles in the main event, the ratings tumbled. And it never recovered. Not by much, not even by 0.1. I don't want to go into a long tirade here, but, you know, he's come a long way, Baron Corbin. Even being called up from NXT to the main roster, he struggled for a little bit. Even after winning the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, they didn't do anything with him, at least not right away. Sure, he became Money in the Bank winner, eventually United States champion, and then the general manager, then Constable, in no particular order. And now he's bragging about beating the Olympic champion at WrestleMania. It's almost difficult to explain how and why the fans resent him, Corbin that is. And it's not his fault. I mean, sure, he can work on a lot of his deliveries, but I feel as if whatever he says that's supposed to mean something, it doesn't feel or sound believable, not coming from his mouth. And him, I mean, it doesn't work for everybody, but him particularly, maybe if he doesn't smile as much and if he wants to be taken serious. Like before he cut his hair, he was taken a little bit more serious. He was intimidating looking. But when they have him change his wardrobe, but still come up to the same music, it took a while to get used to. But, you know, I'm expecting a rebel-looking guy who, just literally hung up by himself. And there was a little bit of a video documentary somewhere on YouTube that was filmed by WWE that he's a loner. You know, he'll eventually get a new tattoo or touch up on one he's had already and go out binging for a little while by himself. That's not the same character we see coming across TV now. You know, he's been corporalized, if you will, if that's even a word. And he's wearing the shirt, the vest, slacks or trousers, what do you want to call them? So it completely changed the man. And if it's kind of like the actor, what's his name, Hayden Christensen, try to play Anakin Skywalker in episodes 2 and 3. No, his delivery sucked, and he was supposed to be the Dark Lord of the Sith, a master Jedi, if you will, in Darth Vader, and that was cringing to get through. This is not as bad, but it's getting there. And it goes on, it falls on many people's laps. It's creative, writing up the dialogue for him and how he delivers it. So there's blame all around. But when you realize that out of all the people to put in the main event to get a title shot, or at least an opportunity for one, and your ratings dropped, I guarantee, I'll bet anything, if the outcome was completely different and it was Drew McIntyre the one getting the shot at AJ Styles to get a championship opportunity, ratings either would have steadied or rised up a little bit, a little more for curiosity's sake, to see how is this going to go down. Now, I didn't follow Impact too much, so I don't know if before Styles left, I don't know if he ever had an encounter with McIntyre there. And if he did, I'm going to look it up. But if he didn't, just imagine the first ever clash between Styles and McIntyre. And the WWE blew it. There's still a chance for it to happen later on, but like they always say, it's always the best first impressions you give, and that's the one that lasts much longer. And they missed this one. Sami Zayn cuts a promo inside the ring, showing off his Instagram pictures of all the locations he's visited in Europe during his tour, pointing out the fact that in each picture, he's smiling, but when he returned to WWE, not so much. Once again, blaming the fans for his downfalls as he goes to leave, we have the debuting Cedric Alexander make his way to the ring as he goes one-on-one with the newly acquired Cesaro post-draft. And I'll get into that later because apparently there were even more changes over the weekend. And it looks like Cesaro ends up keeping Sheamus's theme music coming in. No word on Sheamus at this point other than he's injured. And yeah, this really came out of nowhere. Cesaro still wearing his bar attire, still giving off his bar mannerisms, but when he appeared in front of the audience, it wasn't his typical bar poses. He just walked straight down the stage, down the ramp, and into the ring. Now, I don't know if this will be a feud moving forward, but Cedric Alexander and Cesaro had a great match on Raw. First time I see them together, and probably the legit first time anyone's seen them together, at least in the WWE ring. And there was a lot of back and forth. There were a lot of counters to counters. So in the end, we see Alexander try to perform a springboard maneuver from the apron, jumping off to the top rope. But Cesaro will catch him in midair with a forearm uppercut and will get the win. Now, the match was great, so it could have gone either way. But I mentioned nitpicking earlier. Could have Alexander gotten the win instead? I mean, I get not everything has to be happy moments and the heels would have to lose all the time. No, I get that. But Cesaro's been there for quite some time. In comparison, Cedric has not, at least with this company, and maybe got a bit of the rub moving forward because we don't know what's happening with the bar. If they're returning, if they're going to be reuniting, or if they're going to be split for good once Sheamus has recovered and returns and he'll stay on Smackdown, we don't know. But even as the bar together, they've accomplished a lot. They disappeared here and there, had a nice, decent run with the Smackdown Tag Team Champions. So it's safe to say that they've been paying their dues. Now, am I wrong in that? I'm sure someone would point out and say, well, this is missing. You missed to point out that. Okay, fine. We'll argue that until the cows come home. But here, at this moment, I felt that maybe Cedric should have been the one to get the win because not everybody watches Raw and SmackDown follows 205 Live. And unless it's even promoted or advertised properly, we wouldn't even know who the hell Cedric Alexander is. Being a former Cruiserweight champion, probably the time, that short run that the Cruiserweights were on Raw, and they eventually took him out. And back then, this is before they had the LED ring post and the LED apron, or skirts, I should say, that they had to change out the ring rope colors for whatever reason. They didn't have to do that. As if the LED stage and ramp wasn't enough. And eventually the LED skirts to, I guess, brighten things up a little bit more. They didn't have to change the colors of the ropes. Triple H said, the Cruiserweights are coming to Raw. Okay. Word for word what he said, the Cruiserweights are part of Monday Night Raw. Until 205 Live was created, did they really need to have their own identity? If the Cruiserweights, they're freaking Cruiserweights. Leave it up to the ring announcer. Said the following contest is scheduled for one fall, and it will be a Cruiserweight match. or in the cruiserweight division. So we know what to expect. Rather than just, okay, the ropes went from red to purple. I guess it's time for a cruiserweight match. It's like they overthink things way too much for the sake of a TV show. And I hate to really call it it's a TV show. I know it is, but growing up, I'm going to off again. But growing up, it's just I thought of more. We all thought of it more than just a TV show. Just overzealous, I guess, overthinking. Who knows? The Usos were being interviewed backstage, only to be interrupted by the Revival. So I guess we're going to have a feud here moving forward. I hope Hanson and Rowe do not end up having a identity crisis, but they had yet another name change from one week to another for the former War Machine / War Raiders / name I'm never going to say, to the new names, the Viking Raiders. Yes, this team re-debuted in the WWE in less than 1 week after debuting originally on Monday Night Raw. More than likely, where the previous name wasn't popular and it wasn't going to catch. What exactly are we experiencing? We'll thankfully never know. But that person that I mentioned earlier, that I suggested, and I hope it exists backstage, that says, yeah, this may not work, probably was the same person that came across all the social media hate, took it back to Vince, or at least creative, and say, hey, look at this. They don't like this name. They're asking why was it changed in the first place? So compromising with the name they wanted to go with initially and the previous names that the fans were loving and were used to, smash them together and you get a brand new sandwich in the Viking Raiders. Obviously, since I'm saying it more than once here, I approve. If anyone's asking for my opinion, but I approve. And oh, by the way, they're still the NXT Tag Team Champions. They don't announce them that on Raw, which I mentioned weeks ago, even before WrestleMania. Imagine the visuals had they won them. Ricochet and Aleister Black winning the NXT Tag Team titles from the very same team appearing on WrestleMania during the Fatal 4-Way match for the Smackdown Tag Team titles. What's so taboo of not having the NXT champions or tag team champions show up with said physical tag team belts? Is it a crime? Is it a some kind of rule against nature or something? In all honesty, there is no excuse. There really isn't. When you have previous NXT champions appear with NXT titles around their waist, over their shoulder, like Kevin Owens, really doesn't make no sense whatsoever. So unless they're going to defend the titles on Raw anytime soon, and they were successful, the Viking Raiders were, this week on NXT, retaining against the Street Profits. I believe the Undisputed Era are next in line. So what's the end game here as far as the NXT Tag Team Championships? Because if you're not going to announce them as champions on Raw, then what's the point? Let alone have them appear with the titles. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But here they were supposed to have a tag team match, actually handicap match with the Lucha House Party, 3-on-2. Well, this led to a no contest as the Lucha House Party was still being introduced and in the ring posing. The Raiders just attacked them and left everyone laid out. And it's funny how towards the end of the beatdown, Viking Raiders was trending. I took that as a positive because, they screwed up, WWE. You just don't fix something that is not broken. Had they appeared or were debuted originally as the Viking Raiders, I don't think it would have been as bad, but having that other word or name to it before, again, it did sound like an amusement park roller coaster. Maybe a spin-off movie for the next Pirates of the Caribbean. It just didn't make sense. The Raw Tag Team Champions Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder were being interviewed and didn't seem to be that all concerned about the new tag teams appearing on Raw. Then we get the Unified Women's Champion Becky Lynch heading to the ring, mentioning that Lacey Evans is just another version of another blonde getting favors from higher-up authorities. And, of course, this prompted Evans to step out, insulting Becky of her heritage, and does not know how to act like a woman because she's the man. Now, unless I misunderstood, Lacey Evans mentioned here that both titles were on the line. But considering what we'll find out on Smackdown the next night, she was right, but not in a way that it was mentioned here. But it will be for the Raw Women's title of Becky Lynch taking on Lacey Evans. But for now, we're going to have Becky Lynch go one-on-one with Alicia Fox. And there was a real scary botched move here where Becky could have hurt herself, not herself, or gotten hurt, I should say, in the process. So I'll try to explain it best as possible. As she was coming off the ropes, did a tilt-a-whirl and looked like she was going to perform a hurricanrana or head scissor takedown, but either Alicia didn't have a proper grip on Becky's body or didn't step properly moving forward because she nearly dropped her on her head. Thankfully, Becky landed on her back and surely delivers the disarmer for the submission and gets the win. Yeah. This will definitely make Botchamania if it hasn't already. And it's interesting, just as the referee was calling for the bell for the submission, I had to go back to make sure that Becky get the win by submission or disqualification, because as the referee is looking to ring the bell, Lacey Evans comes through the timekeeper area and delivers a woman's right, only to have Becky stand up again almost immediately and deliver a second woman's right hand, leaving Becky Lynch laid out another week on Raw by Evans because she's a lady. Ricochet is now going solo on Raw. Again, I'll get into that later, as he goes one-on-one with the reestablished Robert Roode. It's funny how the commentators point that out to make sure we heard it right. Yes, Robert Roode, you heard that right, because there was another name change, and maybe there would have been another, at least maybe they thought there was going to be another debate about that. But no, Bobby Roode used to be known as Robert Roode in Impact Wrestling. So if anything, for wrestling fans, it's a callback. He shaved the beard. So depending how you want to look at him, he does look like an updated version of Ravishing Rick Rude, or another wrestler that I'll name later on in a different story. But yeah, he looks like him too, without the lollipop. But Robert Roode is in the WWE. These two had a great match, but at the end, we saw Robert Roode defeat Ricochet with a glorious DDT after Ricochet attempted a 450 splash, but Roode countered. And I believe he just gave Ricochet his first ever pinfall loss on Monday Night Raw. We are introduced to the Firefly Funhouse, a bit of a hybrid between Pee Wee Herman's Playhouse and Mr. Rogers. As Bray Wyatt returned, this was a vignette, by the way, showing his new slim physique and trimmed beard and haircut, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. Somewhat of a mohawk, but still has the dreads in them. And turns out that the buzzard in the box, his name's Mercy, and we see him in much more brighter environment, along with the creepy porcelain doll, in the black wedding dress. I believe called Peppy. I've heard that right, Peppy the Witch. So Bray here, he takes a chainsaw and chops off the top of the head of a cardboard cutout of his previous incarnation of Bray Wyatt, as he's a new man. To be honest, we're not exactly sure where this is going. This was definitely, I guess, a twist that can still be changed, because shortly after he introduced himself, he held up these gloves that looked like they were either batting gloves or golf gloves. And one glove said hurt and the other one said heal. And I find this entertaining, don't get me wrong, but what I'm trying to say is I'm not too convinced that this is what the Bray Wyatt character is moving forward is going to be. All humble and nice, Mr. Roger-esque a little bit, asking kids to join him like he did before during the Wyatt family, and having him wear goat face masks. So it's the first week because they replay the same Firefly house show the next day on Smackdown. And interesting. I mean, you go from dark and gritty and kind of scary to this. This better pay off. It better have a hell of a payoff. And I don't think we're not going to see it until Bray Wyatt actually returns into the ring. And on another note, we've seen this before, where obviously mentioning about the Viking Raiders, but at least the Raiders, they didn't have their ring attires or appearances changed dramatically anyway. They didn't come out with the shields or the harpoons or whatnot. Maybe later on the next pay-per-view debut for the main roster. But for Bray, I just hope this doesn't turn out to be like another Beaver Cleaver or Beaver Cleavage, whatever his name was, basically Headbanger Mosh, where you had the guy on air, even though it was later revealed that it was a work, but on live TV basically say like, yeah, this is stupid, this is not working out, because everyone knew. The fans weren't buying into it. And then the fact that they were going to have the manager who was playing on air, he was his mom, that they had relations together. I mean, we were never shown, thankfully, but it was implied, and that was the direction that they were going. Unfortunately, that lady passed away many years later, but thankfully, that never happened. They didn't go that route. Thrasher, fortunately, healed from his wounds and returned, and they reformed the Headbangers for a little while longer, to eventually they just disappeared into thin air. But I just hope they try this with Bray. And it wasn't clear how the audience were reacting in the arena. I guess that's why on SmackDown they replayed it and try to get the reactions on film, but people just were standing up, turning around, looking up at the Titantron, watching. Really no cheers, no boos. They were just standing and facing the Titantron watching this. So time will tell. So main event, Seth Rollins will defend the Universal title against the winner of this match, AJ Styles 1-on-1 with Baron Corbin. The match was pretty good for what it was, but in the end we see AJ Styles victorious, hitting the phenomenal forearm and getting the 3 count on Baron Corbin. Out comes Seth Rollins to shake the man's hand, and they go face to face as Raw went off the air. Over on SmackDown, Shane McMahon opens up the show. And it's funny, I guess ironic, where he shows us the footage of the previous week where Roman Reigns Superman punched Vince McMahon. And then we cut back to Shane and how sickening it was to see that. How another man could put his hands on another man's father. This coming after Shane assaulted the Miz's father. I thought that was hilarious. And the commentators, oh Lord, the commentators. They argued so much it wasn't even funny. I just tuned out. I really did. Before, during, and way after, even when Shane wasn't even in the damn ring, or Roman Reigns, or even The Miz, because he's on Raw now, every once in a while it would be brought up about Shane attacking The Miz's father, George, but how's that any different from what Roman Reigns did to Vince McMahon was Graves' argument, which I get, but seriously? Did that take the entire show to argue with when everything else was going on? It was just, you got to tone that shit down. So, of course, Shane baits Roman Reigns to come out to the ring. Reigns was about to speak, but instead he just dropped the microphone. Shane, in response, does the same thing, even though he has this I just shit my pants look in his face. Because from behind came Elias, and both men attacked Roman Reigns here. He tried to fend them off, but the numbers were too much, and Elias would deliver drift away and would leave Roman Reigns in the ring. We segue into a rematch from the previous week on Raw, where Intercontinental Champion Finn Balor in a non-title match going one-on-one with Andrade, with Zelina Vega. And yes, Andrade is back on Smackdown. Again, I'll explain that a little bit later. So with that happened another trade. Aleister Black is now on SmackDown as well, hence why Ricochet is flying solo on Raw. And I'll explain a little bit more on that later. This match was great. I don't think it was as good as the one from last week, but at the end, it was Balor getting his win back here, 50-50 booking after delivering the coup de grace, pinning Andrade. Backstage, we see Elias singing a proposal, if you will, or a proposition to Roman Reigns to face him one-on-one at Money in the Bank, as he and Shane leave together in a limo from the arena. Kairi Sane having her first one-on-one match on SmackDown, this time taking on Peyton Royce. Again, the Iconics, they entertain me. You know, they talk a lot of shite, and I get that, but they do it in such. It's almost like I got a few emotions going on at the same time. They're bad guys, yes. Playing a bit of the cowardly lion kind of thing, yeah, and a bit of they're full of themselves, you know, and they just make fun of everything and everyone that they encounter. On top of that, being the women's tag team champions, yeah, that's like rubbing salt in your wound because you can't stand them. And you know what? How are they more entertained? How do I find them more entertaining than I do Baron Corbin? And Corbin, at least on the main roster, has accomplished and established so much more than the Icons have. Go figure, I guess. I don't know. But here, Kairi Sane wasted no time in putting Peyton Royce away, delivering the insane elbow, and wins the match. So during the celebration, you have Kairi Sane, Asuka, and Paige, who are all ringside in the ring celebrated with Kairi. And then we have a face-off, if you will, but from a distance, as Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville jump on, well, they don't jump, they appear on stage and just have a stare down back in the ring with Sane and Asuka. Of course, nothing happens here because this literally segues into yet another trade. Well, they're not really trading because Raw didn't get anyone, to be honest. But Jinder Mahal returned to SmackDown with both Singh brothers, as he was going to go one-on-one with Chad Gable, another acquired talent from Raw to SmackDown, as this happened post-draft. But the match never got started because Lars Sullivan attacked Gable from behind on the aisleway and left him laying, as Lars goes into the ring and demolishes both Singh brothers, and Jinder Mahal was able to escape all of this, but not so much the Singh brothers. I believe it was Samir who received a freak accident, and his brother got the high-rise spine buster and delivered a sit-down running powerbomb. So, yeah, the Singh brothers are just crash test dummies at this point. They had great potential. I remember when they first started as a tag team. Hell, even I believe they were both in the Cruiserweight Classic. And they both shined. They teamed up, kind of tried to run with the Cruiserweight division and then 205 Live in the early days. And, well, again, it's one of those, at least they're getting TV time. They're on the main roster, so how much can you really complain? We set for a face-off between Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch. As Charlotte points out that she never lost her SmackDown title. It was all Ronda's fault. As Becky reminded Charlotte that it was a winner-take-all match. So these two had quite the enjoyable argument back and forth. As Becky pointed out to Charlotte, needs to step aside and have others step up to the opportunity to challenge for the titles like Bayley, who happens to come down the ramp. And Bayley pointed out to Becky that she's never beaten her at all. So she challenges Becky. Charlotte challenges Becky. So because we don't have authority figures on TV anymore, the wrestlers pretty much run the asylum and they make the option, or not the option, but they make the choices on the fly. So we get Bayley one-on-one with Charlotte, and the winner will take on Becky Lynch for the SmackDown Women's title at Money in the Bank. Because at first it was described as a future championship opportunity. Less than a minute later, they changed that, going from an opportunity, future opportunity, to that future opportunity is happening at Money in the Bank, where Becky Lynch will have to defend the SmackDown Women's title against Charlotte, who defeated Bayley here. So Becky's pulling double duty at Money in the Bank. So this is where, I don't know if it was a mistake or it was changed later on, because it was slipped out by Lacey Evans the night before about having both titles on the line, even though she was challenging for the Raw title. So it might have been a slip up, might have been a mistake on someone's part. And yes, I realize it was Evans who delivered it, but might have been worded in a wrong way for her to repeat it as a dialogue on air. But it was a mess. Once again, we get a replay of the Bray Wyatt Firefly Funhouse. Nothing's changed. It was the exact same episode. But we do get into the main event, as it was one-on-one Shinsuke Nakamura against WWE Champion Kofi Kingston, as the honorary New Day member Big O and Xavier Woods had their own pancake commentators table. Lana and Rusev were also ringside for Nakamura's corner. And in the end, we see Kofi Kingston deliver the SOS to Nakamura, but this caused Rusev to hit the ring, causing the disqualification. In comes Big O and Xavier. They take out Rusev to the outside of the ring, followed by Shinsuke. And Xavier does a jump over the top rope, taking out only Rusev because Shinsuke stepped aside and delivered a Kinshasa, taking out Xavier. So back in the ring, as Owens is trying to consult to Kofi, Shinsuke goes after Kofi Kingston, only to step out of the way and deliver a Trouble in Paradise. Shinsuke goes down, and from out of nowhere, as if we didn't see this coming, Kevin Owens super kicks Kofi Kingston, turning heel. Really, no one was surprised by this. No one. My only complaint, if I were to have one, is, wow, that was soon. That was pretty quick. But then again, you got Money in the Bank coming up in a couple of weeks. They haven't announced it yet, but more than likely we're going to see Kofi Kingston defend the title against Kevin Owens at Money in the Bank. As Owens was not through, he had his organic, euphoric look on his face as he's having pleasure in kicking the shit out of people. So he beats down Kofi some more. Xavier tried to intervene when Xavier was the one receiving the apron powerbomb. And Kofi was holding him in his arms. How dare you? I'm going to get you. As Owens slowly walked away and Smackdown went off the air. So, again, there's a chance that, a pretty good chance, we'll hear this on Tuesday this week. Kofi Kingston's response and going one-on-one with Owens at Money in the Bank. So that was your Raw and SmackDown review. I think both shows had their moments, mostly good, but the others, I guess they could have done a little bit better, but hey, who am I to complain about? I mentioned earlier about the WWE stock. It had risen to nearly $100, but it's not even close to that anymore, at least not at this point. The company released their first quarter 2019 financial results and had a net income of a loss of $8.4 million. It dropped over $13. The stock is now at about $85.38 after starting this past Thursday at $98.54 of a loss of over 13%. And not the way any company wants to see the financial world react to their latest quarter numbers, but where is this coming from? I mean, your guess is as good as mine. If this has anything to do with TV ratings, because ratings don't matter anymore, pal. I'm no expert in this, but I just thought anyone that's listening who has a shareholder, or is a shareholder, I should say, with WWE stock, yeah, you might want to keep your eye on this one. I'm not saying to cash out because there's a chance this might rebound, but depending how many you have, you want to press your luck and not cash out and have things just fall even lower and not be worth anywhere near the $85 it is now, $85 a share. Just saying. So considering that it's not been a week since the draft, no last minute or late swapping, but some were left with their heads scratching. After being drafted to Raw on last week's episode, Andrade and Zelina Vega ended up on Smackdown this week. As per Pro Wrestling Sheets, they stated that Upper Brass felt that the move was necessary after last week's shows. And also PW Insider chimed in. There were certain factors behind the decision to move Zelina Vega, Andrade, and eventually Aleister Black back to SmackDown. With Vega and Andrade, their switch was done partly due to Fox, as the network requested that they have an on-screen pair to be moved back to Raw due to their lack, Fox that is, their lack of any major Latino stars on the show. WWE are said to be aiming alongside Fox to showcase their Latino stars on Fox Deportes. So when it comes to Black, Aleister that is, he's married to Zelina Vega. And no one really mentioned this last week, including myself. But Andrade is dating Charlotte Flair. So everyone turns out happy that they're all under the same blue umbrella. As the WWE has been trying really hard not to break up or separate couples, especially married couples, when it comes to having them on different brands. Personally, even if it's nothing to do with the Fox deal or the reasons given here by PW Insider and the Sheet, yeah, you shouldn't break up any couples like this. I mean, it wasn't always one company, multiple brands, and you got these different rosters and not expect there be some kind of romance going on with two people. And then you get separated because, it's good for business, pal. That sucks. That really sucks. So I don't know if anyone else is smarting other people up about this, that, we're seeing the ugly side of things when couples are split. And not necessarily because of the brand draft or anything like that, but one is home nursing and recovering from injuries or surgery while the other one's on the road. When Bryan was injured, Brie was towards the end of her run anyway, but before Bryan announced his retirement the first time, Brie stayed home with him. And she wasn't seen on TV much at all. Eventually started making the rounds because, someone has to pay the bills. And Bryan was still recovering from his last injury back then after WrestleMania 30. And then a short time later announced his retirement. But it was still with the company in some capacity, being the general manager of SmackDown. And what was it, the commissioner? Whatever he was. And and it was around that time as well that he and Bray decided to have a family. So, good for them. So it worked out that way. So that's the bright side of things. But the ugly side is also that, you look at a Alberto Del Rio and Paige when they were dating at the time, and how they were intentionally separated, because even then reports were that they weren't always getting along, but they still dated, go figure, and they just caused a ruckus in the locker room. And of course there was that whole incident at the Orlando International Airport, but eventually Paige, wised up and broke away from the guy, and now he's doing his thing too. He can apologize all he wants, but I doubt he'll be back anytime soon. So that's the reasons given why Andrade and Zelina were back on SmackDown, and why the trade for, or not the trade for, just sending off Aleister Black to SmackDown as well. Dave Meltzer reporting on the latest Observer that the WWE has decided to hold Luke Harper to his contract that he's locked in holding for quite some time. Harper's contract, as it is supposed to expire at the end of November of this year, but 6 months has been added due to the time off for his wrist surgery, as his contract was frozen during that time period. With the added time, Meltzer stated that the WWE's contractual citing is that Harper can't leave until right before next year's WrestleMania. Wow. I don't know if they're going to use him at all. Probably not a good idea, considering that Harper is not interested, unless he buys himself out of his own contract, like the British Bulldog had to do one time, which I think was about $250,000. So basically, Harper would have to pay the WWE whatever remaining salary is left in the contract for him to leave, to do anything, and not wait another full year to be doing something else for someone else. That really sucks. It's almost like being held hostage, but unfortunately, that's what these contracts have. They have these what's this ironclad terms in there that you agree to. Now, I don't know if Harper wasn't aware that the time he was away was added back into the contract because it was frozen. Well, that really sucks. This is why you got to read every single line in the contract. And I know it's several pages, but you want to lawyer up. Another update from Dave Meltzer regarding Sasha Banks and the situation with her and WWE, as things are unchanged between both parties. Of course, this is after it was reported that Sasha Banks asked for her release after WrestleMania. It was reported previously that Banks signed a new multi-year deal with the company, and Meltzer said that she's trying to sit out the remaining of the deal. Similar to Luke Harper, except Harper wants to be out now not with Banks, but along with Banks. But Banks signed a new multi-year deal. So, she's going to sit out the next 2 to 3 years or whatever long this is. Meltzer would say, Sasha Banks, the situation is unchanged. They are now at a stalemate, and the word is, and of course you know what this goes, or how this goes, but the word is, if she wants to sit out the rest of her contract, she can sit out the rest of her contract. If you know what this means, that means she's going to be sitting out forever, because they're going to add time for not working. These contracts are very, very difficult. And like I said before, they can be. You got to read every single word, every single line in that darn thing. Because the loopholes, if any, they probably won't work in your advantage. So go back to the John Oliver report from a few weeks ago, and the changes they made to them over the years, and probably won't be the last time. It's just astounding. And Sasha Banks is basically getting, if this is what's going to happen, because we don't know. We haven't heard anything from Sasha Banks herself, other than she's unfollowed WWE on social media. We don't know. There are two sides to the story. And I've always said this. I'm in a side of things where I believe it when I see it. When in some cases, I believe it when I hear it. But sitting home doing absolutely nothing, getting paid, I mean, I know of a lot of people that would love to do that. But at the same time, you have to keep and maintain an image, as you are a public figure. You're gonna have a lot of people hounding you when you go out into public, asking you all these questions, hounding you, wanting. And Sasha Banks is known for, not too fond of fans coming up to her at airports when they recognize her and want a selfie, want an autograph. There've been many reports that she'll just shrug them off and not want to be bothered. So imagine now, if she sits out the rest of her contract, of how is she going to get around unless she changes her hair color or maybe go out in disguise or whatnot. Who knows? But I can appreciate her passion here. And if the stories are that she was left in the dark until the day of WrestleMania, thinking, hey, what's going on? And wondering what did she and Bayley do to deserve that? Well, if you just go on what's been going on TV and read some reports that are related to it, nothing. They've had her do absolutely nothing. Creatively, that is. And Bayley. Well, here are titles. You go out to Smackdown, you go out to NXT, say whatever, but you're going to end up losing every single match that you're in. Every single match that you're in, you're going to just lose. I can appreciate her passion. I can appreciate and understand her protest, if you will. But I don't know. This is a new one for me as far as how a talent is treating this. She didn't walk out. She didn't quit. Even I guess besides asking for her release is a form of quitting, but it always comes down to the contracts. You can be in breach, you can be sued, or not get paid at all. If the lawyers will go back to Sasha's particular contract and say, well, she has no right to do this and blah blah blah, but in hindsight, maybe she does. Who knows? My advice would be, if you're going to sign with a WWE as a talent, as a quote-unquote contract or independent contractor, I would lawyer up just to be on the safe side. The Undertaker and Kurt Angle both have been pulled from Starrcast II. As Conrad Thompson shared his statement, saying the announcement went wild and viral. I was told it had gotten to WWE's attention and that Vince McMahon texted The Undertaker about the appearance. Taker's representation, which is a company called Get Engaged, called to me saying WWE says he cannot do it. I suggested Vince McMahon, Hunter, or Stephanie McMahon to appear. And I said I would donate 100% of the proceeds to Connor's Cure and match the donation personally, which in turn a negative into a positive for everyone involved. I asked to keep Kurt Angle and announced Shawn Michaels as the replacement for The Undertaker, said Thompson. I offered to book everyone through the office. I wanted to play by the rules, but I felt like I already had, since each of these guys were actively marketing themselves for outside appearances via booking agents or their own social media. I have checked in daily for a week now, and nothing is changing. Also, according to a Twitter post by Conrad Thompson, it seems that Terry Funk will no longer be attending Starrcast II, as Mr. Funk is currently dealing with the loss of his wife, Vicky, who passed away just under a month ago. And Terry Funk shared that it was a little too soon to return to the public life after the tragedy. So at least with Terry Funk, it's understandable completely. But with The Undertaker and Kurt Angle, I mean, it is a dick move by WWE, especially if they're dealing with a third party, dealing with the bookings, such as Get Engaged. And mind you, Taker charges $25,000 an hour for an appearance. So if you online and the line stretches around the block and you don't get there till 3 hours later, and he's only booked for 2 because the company or the venue's only coughing up $50,000, you're shit out of luck. And it's just completely ridiculous. It really is. A complete dick move. Taker at least has been announced for at least a couple of months. Why now pull them out? Because they're bitter. WWE is. Taker isn't doing anything. His contract expired last I checked with WWE. So what exactly is preventing Undertaker appearing anywhere that is not under the WWE brand or umbrella? Kurt Angle, I understand he's I believe a goodwill ambassador and contract is still with the WWE, but he's not a performer. That's a separate contract. The big events I attend to in New York twice a year, on occasion they'll have current WWE superstars. Usually, and here's another thing, and I don't know if this has changed, but usually when they do appear, it's because it's not conflicting with any schedule dealing with the WWE. If they need them to be, well, for example, if the WWE is in New York and they got a house show or a pay-per-view, no, let's stick to house shows. If they got a house show, say at the Barclays Center, and said talent's appearing at the big event that morning, they've made it. They can make it, and soon after, right after, because these things end a little early, they can head straight to the arena from there. In the case of, for example, and this happened because I was one of the, I guess, witnesses, or whatever. But when James Ellsworth returned to the WWE about a year and a half ago, what was that? That wasn't. It was Carmella against Asuka. I was gonna say Money in the Bank, but that wasn't the match there. But no, it was way before this. But Asuka was one-on-one with Carmella, and she was distracted by an individual in Asuka's mask and robe. It turned out to be James Ellsworth. A couple of weeks before that, he was set to appear at the big event, and he canceled. And that's because the WWE called him back. And usually they will grant said talent to fulfill any and all obligations, appearances, and so forth. But I guess whatever he was being offered to appear at a big event was chump change compared to the money that WWE was offering, and just dropped out completely, which, if that was the case, and that's what I was told, but, I don't have that authority, and I don't have that, promoters or booking capabilities to find out all these inside, behind the scenes intel or whatever. The point is, it's happened before with no problems, no issues. So in the case of The Undertaker, he can show up anywhere he wants to. If he wants to do a ribbon cutting ceremony for the next SeaWorld being opened up somewhere in the South, he can do that. I don't know what the connection would be, but hey, the point is he can make appearances if it benefits him, because charging $25,000 per hour, how can it not? For himself and his family, bills can't pay themselves, and since he's not under contract with WWE, I don't know if any income he's receiving from them, unless he signs a Legends deal or becomes a behind-the-scenes agent or whatever. But what a loss. But Comrade Thompson did also mention that refunds were offered since they couldn't find a suitable replacement for The Undertaker and Kurt Angle, which really sucks. And also a loss of money. So I don't know if WWE is going to either try to offer compensation for lost revenue there, because when it comes down to it, that's what it's all about, the money. Moving on. Rhea Ripley, you might have seen or heard about this. Well, she was part of a live stream and created some, not so good waves about it, using an offensive slur, in which she was with other wrestling personalities, are tipped through said streaming service to insult viewers. And apparently a sexual slur offensive term slipped out as she was making the insult. Ripley would identify herself as Demi Bennett, issuing an apology. And I guess I could share that here with you guys. It's really short. Demi Bennett speaking here. I know a lot of you are upset with me after tonight, but I just wanted to publicly say that I am sorry. My brain to mouth filter came down for a second, and I forgot that some words are a big no-no to a lot of people. I am a firm believer that everyone should be treated equally, whether that be race or sexual orientation. With that said, I want to say how dearly sorry I am to everyone that was offended by my choice of words tonight. Tonight being when the streaming took place. Other than this, there were no other reports of at least WWE or NXT UK coming down on her. It wasn't under any of their brands, as this was more of like off the cuff kind of thing. But again, this goes back to them being public figures, and no matter where you are, what you're doing, especially in today's world, where cameras are constantly on you, whether you're aware of them or not, you got to be careful what you say. So unless your house, your phone lines, or anything else in the house bugged, there really is little to no privacy anymore. But unfortunately, this was done on a live streaming video, and other than doing what she was supposed to do, said something she wasn't. So, yeah. So now I get to a story which I was debating whether or not to share or not because of my, I guess, thoughts about it, or in this case, a thought about person in question. But dealing with the man with the lollipop, as I said earlier, describing Robert Roode. And if you haven't figured it out, it was Joey Ryan. Now, he had issues with Lucha Underground and trying to get out of his contract and things of that nature. So all of that is in the past now with Lucha Underground. But apparently, according to Dave Meltzer, he has re-sparked an interest from WWE. Ryan is his issues with Lucha Underground are settled, and WWE has reached out to him. They wanted to know if he was willing to move to Florida, wrestle a few years, and then serve as a trainer. Ryan currently owns a Los Angeles home and is making far more money than what a regular WWE NXT contract would pay him. This, all according to Meltzer. For him to take such a deal at this point in his career wouldn't make sense. Ryan, who's pushing 40, to take a pay cut to join the WWE at this point in his career is probably not something he's going to try to avoid. It should be noted that despite being a regular member of Being the Elite, Ryan is not under contract with AEW. That's likely since he's barely settled his contractual issues with Lucha Underground not too long ago. So the presumption is that he'll eventually land with AEW when all is said and done. Now, considering how we know Joey Ryan today, let's say for the sake of argument he joins and signs with WWE, how much of his character will change? I mean, we all know about his dick spots, his dick tosses and all that. And we've seen him interact with former WWE superstars, most recently Mick Foley and Jerry Lawler, James Ellsworth, just to name a few. I believe just a few months ago he interacted with Francine from ECW. So a lot of his character dealing with his genitalia, if it ain't him touching it, it's someone else. So again, what exactly sparked WWE's interest in this? I'm just saying his character the way it is now won't fly with WWE. It can't. It just can't. And if, to be told or asked to move to Florida, wrestle for a few years, and eventually become a trainer later on, there's no guarantee everything's going to work out like that. So with that said, what exactly would you be hiring him for besides his in-ring work and his charisma and the ability to awe the audience, but maybe not in a way that you're thinking? Because no, I just don't see how it would happen. Now, I'm not saying Joey Ryan can never join the WWE. Don't get me wrong, but they being WWE pronouns, pal, they've established for years how they try to avoid upsetting their sponsors and their advertisers, and they've been plenty of times, even after the Brian Pillman gun incident, and even the Katie Vick nonsense. There were advertisers that were threatening to pull out. Hell, even USA going like, "Yeah, we're being threatened by sponsors. They're going to pull out completely." That didn't necessarily change WWE's ways long term, but every once in a while they'll sneak in like, "Whoa, was that supposed to happen?" Just to get the people talking enough to tune in the next week to see what the follow up is, and usually it's a letdown. But for the case of Joey Ryan, and if there's any truth to that him receiving a pay cut, then no, for that reason alone, I wouldn't join. And it sucks because I don't know if Joey Ryan's biggest dream was to join the WWE eventually. And if he's making more money now with what he's doing, because he is, or if not, becoming a very hot commodity, then no, don't do it. I wouldn't do it. I would advise against it. I don't know how often you hear that from podcasters, but if it makes sense to me and to others who are reporting it, then yeah, why would you take that pay cut, dude? To do the same thing, to perform more dates, but get paid less? If the independent scene, the independent circuit, the companies there, if they figured it out, why can't WWE? And WWE deals with a bigger budget. They're going to get a bigger one in a few months after the Smackdown deal with Fox. Well, speaking of AEW, they announced during one of the recent episodes of Being the Elite of 4 new signees with the company. They welcomed Peter Avalon, known for his work in Championship Wrestling from Florida. Then there's the former Blue Pants of NXT Stardom, Leva Bates, as Cody Rhodes would prefer that Bates play the librarian. Then there's the tag team of Private Party, a promising young tag team trained out of Amazing Red's House of Glory in New York City. And yeah, they have 4 new talents under the AEW banner. No word as to whether or not they'll have matches in the upcoming Double or Nothing next month, which I guess will be a good time to mention one of the main events. As it was also mentioned during one of the Being the Elite episodes, it was announced that Cody Rhodes will go one-on-one with his brother Dustin Rhodes, or Dustin Reynolds, as apparently Dustin and his connections with WWE are over. Shortly after the announcement was made on Being the Elite, there was a video released on social media throughout of Dustin Reynolds' accounts saying goodbye to the Goldust character. He will later on release a statement basically thanking everyone that followed and believed in him as the Goldust character throughout the years, and to the WWE for allowing him to be as crazy as he was. And yeah, for a long time, despite the Goldust versus Stardust feud that really and unfortunately didn't go anywhere, I think more of themselves that the fans wanted to see Cody versus Dustin at some point. And we were close to it before Stardust was a thing. And when they were having the feud with the Shield back in, was that 2014? Wow, time flies. But these two can definitely still hit it off. We've not seen Goldust or Dustin in the ring in quite some time, but he's kept himself in amazing shape, even being an honorary deputy. So, yeah, he's still doing his thing. He's still staying physically active. And as far as main eventing, being one of the main events for Double or Nothing, I said this was a good move for both brothers, and really establishing how much more AEW can grow. And yeah, I agree. It shouldn't be a place where old misfit toys like ECW was considered at one point, and then later on Impact Wrestling, where if it's not working out for you in WWE, then come over here and at least you'll get some ring time and extra time off, but still get paid as good. Maybe not as good, but you're still doing what you love. And no, I don't think AEW is going to be one of those companies, I should say. But yeah, everybody's behind this idea, and they can't wait for the main event. Here's some bad news that turned into good, as ProWrestlingStories.com first reported that Kamala, the Ugandan giant, real name James Harris, he and his family were in danger of losing their home to the government, specifically in the state of Mississippi, and being owed over $12,000 on property taxes. But it appears that Kamala has weathered that scary storm, and thanks to the donations of fans and a last-minute donation by Chris Jericho, he was able to save his home. And B. Brian Blair, the former Killer Bee in the WWF, and is the president and CEO of the famed Cauliflower Ear Alley Club. He, along with Hall of Famer Mark Henry, helped set up a GoFundMe page campaign for Harris. And Brian Blair shared a positive update on the situation this week via his Facebook page. And it is as follows. Dear friends and supporters, you all have been God-sent. Your support for James Kamala Harris will never be forgotten. And we will thank every one of you personally as time allows. As you can see, because of your generosity, we have exceeded the Harris family's imminent needs. This is amazing. We want to officially end this campaign as of now, midnight, April 21st. And once again, cannot thank all of you enough. Both the MS state and county tax assessors will be paid in full, and the remaining balance will stay with the James Kamala family, or Kamala Harris family, to fix and repair their Ford vehicle with almost 400,000 miles on it. FYI, since the Harris family will have paid their state taxes, they will now be able to file an exception and never have to pay property taxes again. However, in parentheses, this only works if you're at the age of 65, and as per Mississippi law, this cannot be done if you owe the state money. Blair goes on to say, this is a great law, and you may want to remind your state representatives to follow the lead of Mississippi Congress, if your state does not allow this. On behalf of the James Kamala Harris, Mark Henry, and me, B. Brian Blair, may you all be blessed for your kindness. B. Brian Blair. Great man. I got to meet him and his partner, Jumping Jim Brunzell. Great human beings. It's amazing that something like this exists and that they're able to help out their fellow alumni from the pro wrestling world, along with other legends and Hall of Famers. And of course, the fans, they don't forget who you are. Those that have been long forgotten by, let's be honest, by WWE, for reasons beyond our comprehension to ever know what they are. They're never mentioned. They're never showcased. Yeah, they got the alumni page. Okay, but how often do you have visitors on that side? It's not like they have hidden gems of each character or each wrestler on the network celebrating, their birthdays or their anniversaries in the business, things of that nature. But yeah, personally, I love to hear stories like this. It's not always dealing with losing your home, but sometimes, for example, the story of Jake the Snake Roberts, if everyone ever got to see the documentary Resurrection, the fans, they jumped on it. And within 24 hours, I believe, about 90%, if not more, of asked donation, I would have to watch the documentary again to get the proper number, but the fans picked up the ball. And eventually, a couple of days later, they would exceed the asked amount, and Jake was able to get the surgery performed on him. So where others drop the ball, when it's not related or done for PR purposes, the fans pick up the pace and the ball and places like the Cauliflower Club, they're willing and able to reach out and help anyone who has paid their dues, who sacrificed everything and more to the business to give something back as a way of gratitude and saying thank you. I can only imagine what Kamala's emotions were and his family when they found out about this, but this is definitely a happy story. The NWA has announced that the promotion's women's champion, Jazz, has vacated the championship and will not compete against Allison Kay in their match at the upcoming Crockett Cup this week. No word at the time of the reason given as Jazz vacated the championship, but a replacement opponent will be named for Allison Kay as she will still be competing for the title in Concord, North Carolina. It was revealed on Monday that Jazz had vacated the title, ending her 900-plus day reign. That's amazing. Taking to Twitter to address the situation, citing that personal and medical reasons as to why she had to give up her treasured and cherished championship. So shortly after that announcement was made by Jazz, the NWA revealed that Allison Kay will go one-on-one with Santana Garrett for the now vacant NWA Women's Championship, and that Medusa, or Alundra Blaze, prefer what you want to call her, was announced by the NWA that she will present the winner of the match the Women's Championship belt at the Crockett Cup. Well, attention anyone living or moving to Shanghai anytime soon, but the WWE has announced a 4-day tryout to take place this July in Shanghai, making this the largest talent search in WWE history, and the company stated that they're willing to take up to 50 male and female athletes from the country to train in the Performance Center. So, if you're listening with the sound of my voice and anywhere near or living in Shanghai, coming up July, you have an opportunity to try for the WWE. You got 4 days if you're not cut within the first 2. So I say head it out. Of course, last Sunday was the Shield's last stand, or the final chapter, as they broke into a live feed of a house show on the WWE Network. I believe they were in Moline, Illinois, or somewhere in the Illinois area of Moline, as Universal Champion Seth Rollins teamed up with Roman Reigns and Dean Ambrose, who is having his last match in the WWE. That's a house show, but at least it was broadcast, taking on Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, and Baron Corbin. Why these three again, I don't know. It could have been, at least for heels' sake, there could have been other appropriate opponents, especially if you're still trying to keep Drew McIntyre relevant, Bobby Lashley doing Lashley things, and Baron Corbin just being the killer of ratings. So this was essentially a rematch from Fastlane. But of course, the Shield wins, and after the match, Rollins had a lot of heartwarming things to say about Dean Ambrose and Roman Reigns. And of course, Roman Reigns, in turn, had a lot of positive things to say. But I think Ambrose pointing out, hey, should it be me getting all this attention? Rollins, who overcame a lot of obstacles to get to where he is now, slaying the beast, among other things, trying to keep it somewhat kayfabe. And of course, Roman Reigns overcoming his personal issues to return to be where he is now. And that Ambrose is just going to move on to the next chapter of his life, whatever that will be. For the most of 2019, it was unclear of the future of Dean Ambrose, but at least going out here, his final match with a win and with his brothers, if you will, on a high note, who can ask for anything else? Who can ask for anything more? Although there are some people that still believe it's all a work, Ambrose isn't going anywhere. But if that's your state of mind, okay. Personally, I don't think it's a work. He's going to be gone for a while. If that translates into him returning in the future, who knows? But he wants to leave for now. No reports or rumors about he and Renee Young starting a family, as Renee Young was there sporting a denim jacket with Dean Ambrose's image on the back in support. So who knows? It's almost as if wrestlers nowadays in this generation are realizing, well, they don't want to start a family or come back home after leaving a family behind and miss out on everything growing up like people in the 80s and 70s and I dare say a lot of the 90s did. It's a real tough job, obviously, to begin with, but also it's overwhelming and it's asking a lot out of you. The people you work with, the people you wrestle with, that becomes your family. Your immediate family, if they're not able to travel with you everywhere you go, they basically gotta wait for you when you get home. WWE has eased up a little bit on the scheduling weekly. You can have up to at least 3 days off. They may not be 3 days in a row, but some take that to their advantage and fly home only to fly out later on that night or the next morning to the next town they got to be in. So it's a real tough life. It's very demanding. If you're not wrestling, then you're traveling. Or if you're not traveling, you're wrestling. Or if you're fortunate enough that you're wrestling in one town and your family's close enough, they can come visit you and stay for a while. Everything gets planned ahead, or at least mostly. And I guess time will tell, and we'll find out eventually what's going to become of Dean Ambrose's post-WWE career. Milwaukee Independent Wrestling, or MKE, ran an event called The Last Night with a K, on April 19th. During one of the matches featuring Ace Steel, who was trained by CM Punk, had a masked figure run into the ring and delivered a GTS maneuver on Darius St. Holmes and just left as quickly as he appeared. Many led to believe that this was indeed CM Punk under the mask for a variety of reasons, as Fightful's Sean Ross Sapp indicated that this isn't the first time Punk has done something like this since leaving wrestling. Sapp will go on to say, a trusted source contacted us and said that this actually isn't the first time it's happened. Apparently, Punk appeared under the hood at some point before his falling out with Colt Cabana, which would have been during the Wrestling Road Diaries 3 filming. We're told that it was dropped from the final cut after Punk and Cabana's issues developed. So, what are some signs that this could have been Punk? Well, the footage is online, first off, and Punk was wearing a black hoodie with some white letterings early in the day, and he took a selfie that was later posted on Instagram by a fan. And later on, when we saw the masked man hit the ring, it was the exact same black hoodie with the same white lettering and words from the picture from earlier. So that was the only indication, as far as I could tell. It could have been a swerve. It could have not been Punk, because to me the physique looked way too slim. But then again, Punk has been heavy training in MMA, and could have just tried to swerve us a little bit, and just, Punk would just give his hoodie to another wrestler that was slimmer than he was, and perform the GTS and leave. Now, it's not like Punk is under contract with anyone, at least any wrestling promotion that we're aware of, that he had to disguise himself. Similar to like Rick Rude, he was still with the Royd's London insurance policy. Had he been seen wrestling anywhere, especially in the States, they would have cut all ties because he was collecting money from them as an insurance company due to his injuries. So he wasn't necessarily getting physical, but I guess not to take a chance. We all knew it was him. He was just under a mask. And he never really got physical, at least not until he got to the WWE, being part of the original DX. But that's not the case here. So if it's just the fact that we've always heard Punk would never return to wrestling and never wrestle again, okay, I can buy that. But at the same time, according to Fightful, it's not the first time he's done this. He's done it before plenty of times. And I guess he misses it that much, but doesn't want to be looked at as a hypocrite that you say one thing, but here you are doing it anyway. But in all fairness and in hindsight, it's fun to see something like this once in a while. Whether it generates enough buzz to, have him have that little wrestling bug again, who knows? But last I heard, he was still training for another MMA fight, so It may not happen for quite some time. Either way, let's wait and see what happens. Some injury news and updates. Daniel Bryan is going through whatever it is he's going through post-WrestleMania, as said injury is still being kept in the dark from many people. The nature of the situation is being closely guarded, as no information has surfaced as to what type or how serious the injury is, and much less be made public. This is especially concerning, considering the concussion history he's had throughout the years and how close it came to be putting to the end of his in-ring career with the WWE. And this is another case of time will tell whether Bryan himself will come out publicly and announce what's going on, or WWE says something in any shape or form. But for now, Daniel Bryan is out. Chris Sabin has confirmed that his recent ACL surgery was a success after suffering the injury during an ROH taping in Atlanta. This is the third time that Sabin has been forced to have surgery due to an ACL tear. And while he may have been older now than he was back then from the last surgery, he is still seen to be determined to return to the ring and be better than ever. Nia Jax's surgery to repair both of her knees took place yesterday, as confirmed by Dana Brooks, as Nia was in rehab for quite some time. But her spirits were high and thankful, as one of her furry canine friends was next to her on her bed back home. Jax underwent double knee surgery and will be out of action for quite some time, tweeting out a pic in the bed with her dog, and seems to be in good spirits, so get well soon, Nia. Dave Meltzer is reporting via the Wrestling Observer Radio with Brian Alvarez that Jeff Hardy may have suffered an injury while working a WWE house show over the weekend. Meltzer says that the injury may have taken place last Saturday night in Madison, Wisconsin, because by the time Sunday night came around in Rochester, Minnesota, Hardy was visibly and obviously limping around and did not take part in that night's match with his brother, Matt Hardy, as he had a singles match. Jeff would miss the next house show and TV tapings, and is rumored suggesting this happened for storyline reasons, and that Hardy is scheduled for surgery. This is likely why the injury itself is being kept a secret, as this happened just about 2 weeks after winning the Smackdown tag team titles from the Usos before the draft. And in case you're wondering why we haven't seen him on television as of late, I can see that, I can understand that, but maybe some kind of acknowledgement, or just, if the man needs surgery, and whether or not that was intended to take place regardless of winning the tag team titles. I mean, we've seen characters written off television before due to injury, and if the champions are forced to relinquish the titles, just do it that way. I mean, why so secretive of house shows that more than likely everybody's not going to be aware of, much less read about, because not everyone follows or goes into these wrestling websites to find out specifically, in this case, the whereabouts of Jeff Hardy and his brother Matt. Just keep it simple, my suggestion. And if Jeff can't make it to TV, then he can't make it to TV. Then at least have a film crew at said house show and show the footage at the next Smackdown, in this case, and say, well, we have exclusive footage of the injuries to Jeff Hardy sustained over the weekend against said opponents or challengers, as now the Hardys are forced to relinquish the Smackdown tag team titles. It's been done before. To which team exactly at this point, who knows? I say give it to anyone, but it's highly unlikely to do something like that, and no word as to if and when Jeff is going to need surgery anytime soon. Got some updates on upcoming events with the WWE. This particular one from the website of the Wells Fargo Center gives us a glimpse into the future, if you will, post-draft. And there's a show coming on July 14th in Philadelphia. So these are potential spoilers, but for now, take them as you will, because as always, cards are subject to change. But as it stands right now, and this is beyond Money in the Bank, so more than likely this probably is going to be a major spoiler. So if you want to tune out for the next 10 seconds as of now, is scheduled for Universal Champion Seth Rollins to take on Baron Corbin, Roman Reigns taking on Randy Orton, and AJ Styles taking on Drew McIntyre. So welcome back if you tuned out for those few seconds as I just ran down a card of 3 matches, as it looks like it's going to be a co-branded production. The event previously was advertised, so this part was scratched, so no worries, no spoilers here, but this was the original plan, as Baron Corbin and Roman Reigns were supposed to go one-on-one, as well as Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre. Still, this listing should give us an idea of what the WWE is thinking of moving forward, as the dust is still settling, so to speak, after the draft. So let's just say from what I just mentioned of the original plan, it's all been scrambled, if you didn't listen to those few seconds that you tuned out. At first, it seemed WWE Backlash may be no more, at least in 2019, and it may be due to the show in parts unknown, the other place in the world that the WWE got a lot of flack from, and they decided not to no longer mention the names of the country, so I figured I'd do the same. It is being reported by multiple sources that the WWE will not be holding the Backlash pay-per-view on June 16th in San Diego, like once anticipated. It should be stressed that this event was never actually made official by the WWE, but the Pentagon Arena in San Diego had the show listed on their event calendar, which updated with the 2019 graphics. Also, WWE had created a webpage for the event that could have been viewed at the WWE.com/WWE Backlash San Diego, but now it redirects to a page not found screen. WWE reportedly moving the Parts Unknown show to June 7th, and the company has reportedly decided not to have Backlash just 9 days later for advertising and marketing reasons. The WWE listed Backlash on their touring schedule, and on paperwork they filed in court for June 16th, but had not gone around to making this publicly official yet. Additionally, Dave Meltzer now noted that the WWE is now dealing with the situation of having all the weekend house shows in California, such as in Oakland, Stockton, and San Jose. There was a speculated NXT TakeOver event in San Jose that same weekend, but was never made official yet as well. This was the suggested or proposed idea by Triple H, having a standalone NXT TakeOver event separate from a major WWE pay-per-view, if you recall that just a few weeks ago, matter of fact, here on a JM Report. However, the story was updated later this week by the Wrestling Observer newsletter that Backlash will indeed take place on the rearranged date and location on June 23rd in Tacoma. It was previously reported that the event will be canceled due to WWE's first Parts Unknown event in 2019, but it will appear as this is not the case, saying that the San Diego pay-per-view, which was Backlash for June 16th, is now a house show. They did not want to do that, but the Observer, they guessed that the idea is they didn't want to do two pay-per-views in a row. 2 weekends in a row would have been the June 7th and the June 16th, so they moved Backlash to the 23rd, and they're still booking it in Tacoma on the 23rd in San Diego, getting a house show. So a lot of rearranging, a lot of confusion there. Hopefully I didn't make it worse, but it's not like they were trying to lose out on any potential income there by not having an event such as Backlash. So there it is. Bit of a bravery story here. Unfortunately, it came out of some real fudged up stuff here. But as I share this, you can understand why. Former Divas champion Eve Torres issued a statement on Instagram earlier this week in which she revealed for the first time that she was a victim of a sexual assault over a decade ago. Eve spoke and shared about the issue and went on to talk about it, how she's come out of it stronger and a more powerful woman. She shared, "It took me 10 years to admit to myself and then to others that I was a survivor of rape. It happened on a night with mutual friends, alcohol, and while I was out of town in an environment that was unfamiliar to me. At the time of the assault, I used all of these circumstances and tell myself that I had participated in the act when in reality, my verbal and physical resistance indicated otherwise. It is so common for women to believe that because we didn't physically fight him off, quote unquote, we invited it and it wasn't rape. This is not true. When we are faced with a situation that seems impossible to get out of or require a battle, we don't believe we are equipped for it. We often feel we have no other choice than to continue without resistance. This form of cooperation can even be considered a survival tool in some circumstances. But it does not mean that we allow it, wanted it, asked for it, invited it, or choose it. If we do not offer our consent, it is sexual assault. And in many cases, including mine, it was rape. It took me embarking on my journey in Women Empowered to garner their confidence to acknowledge the reality of what happened, and then share my story with others. Eve Torres would end her statement saying, as the shame was stripped away, my power emerged. There was a lot more to the statement here, as it's really a really powerful one. And I encourage anyone who hasn't seen it yet to head over to her Instagram page and look this statement up. I just read about half of it, so it's a lot more insight to this. And I think everyone, whether yourself have been a victim or know someone that has been, should really look into this and maybe find their own strength to overcome this, and not only admit to yourself of what happened, but to hopefully help others from having something like this horrible occur to them as well. For those who don't know, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. It took great courage for Eve Torres to open this much and share with the world. And it speaks more than just volumes. And I think this could reach out to everyone and anyone that need their voices to be heard. And I'll end with this, as this broke late yesterday, about Dean Malenko, reported by Sports Illustrated, has left his WWE backstage role. For the past 8 years, Malenko has worked as an agent, mostly focusing on tag team matches. His career as a technical wrestler was no doubt an asset for any superstar who wanted to compete at the level beyond WWE's standard fare. And no reason behind as to what led to Malenko's stepping away, as the report is implying that he decided on his own, leaving the job behind or leaving this position behind. Whether it's time to move on, whether there was some issues going on, we don't know. We really don't know. And I wasn't sure to share this, but nothing too major. But there was a long list, and there was too many to mention here. There was probably over 20 names, if not more. But there was a long list by Casey Michael of Squared Circle Sirens of upcoming WWE Performance Center tryouts. And the list reads a who's who of other professional sports, of other wrestling schools. For example, there is Jesse Jordan, a trainee of Heath Slater's school. There is AJ Francis, a wrestler from the Team 3D Academy. I believe I met this. I met this person. There is Nick Rodriguez, 22-year-old Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu expert. Powerlifter Dominan Dango. There's a couple of former NFL players as well. And who was it from? Oh, Patrick Scott from Caroline Wrestling Academy. And third-generation wrestler Lance Anawani, just to name a few. And there's a lot more from the Titan Games, from college basketball. Yeah, look it up if you can. Have a moment or two to look at these names. Some of them are well-known, others are not too familiar, but I'm sure in time we'll all get to know these guys. So if you have a moment to head over to the Squared Circle Sirens website to read the entire list and see for yourself of potential big superstars coming to the WWE or in some cases NXT real soon. Well, that will wrap things up just about here at the JM Report. Just want to thank everyone for listening in. Of course, you can follow me throughout social media. If you head over to the description section of the video, you can click on the links to follow me on Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, and of course here on YouTube. And thank you very much for listening again. Subscribe, click that bell to be notified when the next episode goes up of either the JM Report or the next episode of Talking with JM. And so until next time, everyone be good and behave. Take care.
Open your mind and realize that your beautiful world could take my life.